Imagine your mind today as a fan of the Golden State. Every year you hear that there is just one piece missing, that the Warriors are one change away from scaring the NBA again. And when that bomb finally goes off, the first thing that comes is fear and doubt. Did they do something crazy, or this time did they get it right? If you're tired of seeing the team wasting what's left of your idol's peak, of suffering from an inconsistent squad, confusing rotation, and promises that didn't come, true, stay with me in these next few minutes. Today, I'm going to show you, without further ado, why this change could be exactly the shock that the Golden State needed, what really changes on the court from now on, and mainly, if this decision brings the Warriors closer to fighting for the title again, or if it's the beginning of a definitive goodbye to the Golden Era. Before we go behind the scenes of this exchange, do the following. If you are one of those who doesn't abandon the Golden State even in bad times, subscribe to the channel now, because here we tell the truth that many grown-up people don't have the courage to speak. Take advantage and leave a like, because this shows YouTube that the Warriors fans are still alive, are still paying attention, and make this video reach more people in our family. Also activate the bell, because this won't be the only bomb. In the next few hours, new behind-the-scenes information, possible new exchanges, and even the impact of this negotiation on the future of the cast can be revealed, and I'll bring it all here firsthand. So don't leave the video, stay with me until the end, because I'm going to show you if this change is the step that puts the Warriors back in the fight for the top, or if it's the beginning of a mistake that the board won't be able to undo. Se você ama o Golden State Warriors, provavelmente já teve aquela sensação estranha nesta temporada. O time não é ruim, ainda existe talento, ainda há momentos em que tudo encaixa, mas algo parece faltando. It's not easy to admit this when you grew up accustomed to seeing the team dictate the pace of the NBA, shut down opposing gyms, and turn three-point sequences into avalanches. But every now and then, a game comes along that exposes what had been just a silent nuisance. And that's exactly what happened in that recent duel against the Houston Rockets at the Chase Center. Looking at the matchup on the calendar, it looked like one of those games where you expect a quiet night. Full house, confident fans, bulletin board saying it was just another NBA Cup game against an opponent still rebuilding. The Warriors, with all the baggage of champions, facing a Rockets that is still searching for identity. On paper, everything seemed under control. But basketball loves to remind you that too much confidence sometimes takes a toll. What was seen over those 48 minutes was less of a simple regular season game and more of a mirror placed in front of the San Francisco franchise. The team started by showing their quality, as they always do when the system turns, the ball passes from hand to hand, the blocks appear at the right time, and Steph Curry takes care of three defenders at the same time. However, as the clock ticked, it became increasingly evident that Houston hadn't traveled all this way just to meet schedule. There was a clear proposal, a well-designed game plan, and, most importantly, someone willing to take advantage of every loophole. This is where the protagonist of this story comes in. While many were perhaps expecting a dominant night of Alperen Sengun or an athletic show by Amen Thompson, the one who took the script for himself was a newcomer who, until then, had been almost a supporting player in the Rockets squad. A freshman who spent more time sitting on the bench, observing, than actually experiencing the game on the court. But basketball has a curious way of rewarding those who are prepared for the right moment. And that night, that moment arrived. With Fred VanVleet gone, Houston desperately needed someone to take over the offensive operations. Not just someone who dribbled and crossed the court, but a real playmaker who thought about the game, organized the team, understood the spaces, and knew how to attack what the Warriors' defense offered. That's how Reed Shepherd got his chance. And from then on, everything changed. If you watched that game closely, you probably had the same feeling as many in the gym. With each possession, it seemed like the freshman gained more confidence. He didn't behave like someone scared by the pressure of being in the Chase Center, under the lights, facing one of the most successful franchises of recent era. On the contrary, he looked comfortable, serene, patient. He attacked blocks calmly, used his body to protect the ball, found his favorite spots in the mid-range, and, whenever the Warriors' defense gave up space, there he was, punishing, whether with a precise shot or with a millimetric pass. And maybe the most part of it was uncomfortable for those who support the Golden State to realize that that style of play resembled exactly the type of point guard that the team has been looking for years. Someone capable of sharing responsibilities with Curry, of organizing the attack when the opposing defense suffocates our number 30, of maintaining the standard of reading and intelligence even when the main star is on the bench. Instead, this profile was there, on the other side, wearing the Rockets shirt, commanding a comeback in the Warriors' home. Throughout the season, the conversation is always similar. The team still competes, still fights, still poses a danger to any opponent on an inspired night. But there's one question that won't go away. What happens to the attack when Steph rests? Who takes control when the opposing defenses decide they are going to take the Curry out of the game, whatever the cost? Moses Moody has been evolving. Some veterans understand the system and deliver security, but the feeling is that a piece is missing. There is a lack of a guard with enough presence, reading, and decision-making power to transform minutes of survival into minutes of dominance. Against Rockets, this fragility became even more evident. Every time Reed Sheppard punished a late switch, found a free teammate on the perimeter, or exploited the defense's indecision, it seemed like a direct message to the Warriors' front office. This is what you need. It wasn't just a good individual performance. It was almost a practical demonstration of what the perimeter rotation in the Golden State lacks today. The freshman showed impressive pace control. He didn't rush unnecessarily. He didn't insist on forced plays. He didn't seem flustered against an experienced defense. He created advantages with patience, reading every help, every defensive rotation, every mismatch that came his way. And whenever the Warriors tried to force mistakes, he responded with good decisions. For such a young player in such a heavy scenario, this combination of calm and aggressiveness is anything but common. That's why, at the end of the game, the conversation wasn't just about another painful loss or the Golden State's execution errors. The real discussion was different. Are we watching a player who could, in a short time, be wearing our shirt? Is Reed Sheppard exactly the type of point guard needed to prolong Curry's competitive window? When you look carefully at the characteristics of his game, the answer starts to make more and more sense. A point guard who shoots efficiently, who moves well without the ball, who understands systems based on cuts, blocks off the ball, and collective reading, seems tailor-made for the offensive scheme that has made the Warriors a reference in the league. Imagine a player like that running through the lights, appearing free thanks to Steph's gravity, receiving the ball ready to shoot or to find the extra pass. It's the type of scenario that fits perfectly into the franchise's DNA. Furthermore, there is the collective side. It's not just about another player scoring. This is someone who raises the level of his teammates. In Kentucky, he already showed this side of a creator, always attentive to the cut that appears on the blind side, to the pivot that gains position in the box, to the kicker that is unmarked on the perimeter. With the Rockets, that night, all of this became even more evident. He attracted the defense, collapsed the paint, and then distributed the game with maturity. This is exactly the type of reading that a point guard needs to have on a team that intends to compete for a title. And it is at this point that the discussion goes beyond the excitement of an isolated game. The Golden State can no longer afford to approach seasons as if it were still at the beginning of a cycle. Steph Curry's presence at a high level is a privilege that has a deadline. Even though he still delivers extraordinary performances, time will not stop. Every year that passes without a bold move is a wasted opportunity to expand the story of an era that is already historic, but can still gain new chapters. So when we talk about Reed Sheppard, it's not just about a talented freshman. It's about the logic of building a squad around a star who still decides games, but who can no longer carry everything alone. It's about finding players who fit what the team already does well, rather than trying to reinvent the wheel. And suddenly that rookie who took the court because a starter was injured becomes a name that needs to be taken seriously in any debate about the future of the backcourt in the Golden State. Of course, none of this is simple. On the other side, there is a franchise that also sees the value of this young point guard. Rockets has a core full of youth with different profiles, all needing minutes, the ball, space to make mistakes and learn. Amen Thompson, Sengun, other growing names. At some point, the OR organization will have to choose paths, prioritize parts, sacrifice some talents to strengthen specific sectors. And it is exactly at these crossroads that opportunities arise for teams like the Warriors. Houston might look at its own squad and consider that the ideal fit for what they imagine as a future identity involves a point guard with a physical and defensive profile like Thompson, or perhaps another type of movement in the market. Maybe they understand that, faced with a really advantageous proposal, they can give up on Shepherd, not for lack of talent, but for a matter of path, of casting design. And that's where the Golden State needs to pay attention. The Warriors still have interesting assets, future draft picks, young players who arouse curiosity in other franchises, in addition to the winning structure that serves as an attraction for athletes who want a competitive and organized environment. The question is not just would the Rockets listen to an offer, but how far is the Warriors' front office willing to go to turn a chronic problem into a long-term solution? Imagining Reed Shepherd sharing the court with Steph Curry opens up a huge range of possibilities. You would have two players capable of carrying the ball, creating shots, organizing the attack, and maintaining the fluidity that has always been the team's trademark. The opposing defense would have to choose the poison, double down, and leave a highly efficient kicker free, or try to mark both individually and run the risk of being dismantled by cuts, blocks, and reading of the game. Offensively, the fit borders on ideal. And even looking at the other side of the court, where doubts always hover around young point guards, the scenario is not desperate. The Warriors' defensive system, when well executed, has always been able to protect players with individual limitations, as long as they have the will, attention to detail, and tactical understanding. Draymond Green continues to be an anchor point capable of organizing the helpline, providing guidance, and covering specific errors. Shepherd doesn't need to transform into an elite defender to work in context. You just need to be solid, committed, and disciplined. The more you observe the whole, the more the idea stops being a daydream and starts to seem like a concrete plan. A young, intelligent point guard with a reliable shot, game vision, and growth potential, on an affordable contract and at a time in his career when he is still shaping up. On the other side, an experienced team with an established standard of play led by a star who turns any pitcher into an even greater threat just by the gravity he exerts. It is a combination that deserves, at the very least, to be seriously debated. In the end, the match against the Rockets was more than an uncomfortable stumble at home. It was a message. A reminder that, if the Golden State really wants to compete for the top again, it is not enough to rely on the memory of what it has already done. It takes courage to look at your own weaknesses and, above all, a willingness to act before it is too late. The clock doesn't stop. The league doesn't wait. Competitors renew themselves in the blink of an eye. So, when you think about that game, try to look beyond the score. Remember the feeling of seeing a young guard commanding the pace, finding spaces, punishing every flaw in the defense, while our team struggled to maintain consistency when Curry was not on the court. Remember how it became clear that there is a specific type of player that has not yet been fully found to complete this squad. Now, I want to bring you into the conversation. Looking at all this, do you believe that a name like Reed Shepherd is worth a real investment? Do you see him as a complementary point guard who could change the way the Warriors play when Steph rests? What, in your view, would make sense to offer in a future negotiation? Draft picks? Young players? A combination of the two? Think calmly, because this discussion is not just theoretical. It's about what you expect from the future of the franchise you've been following for years. It's about accepting a slow and uncertain transition or betting on a movement that can accelerate reconstruction without giving up immediate competitiveness. It's about honoring what Curry can still deliver on the court by surrounding him with pieces that speak to his game. If all of this made sense to you, if this analysis helped you see that game in a different way, I invite you to stay here on the channel. Closely follow each development, each rumor, each sign that behind the scenes may move in that direction. Leave your comment, share your reading about Shepard, about his fit in the Golden State, about how much you believe this bet would make sense. The more this conversation grows among fans, the clearer the message becomes. The fans see the problem, they understand of the moment and is ready to support bold decisions that make sense on the court. And while the future is still being written, one thing remains true. As long as there is a player with the number 30 wearing the Warriors shirt, there will always be a window, no matter how small, to dream of something big. The question is whether the franchise will have the courage to find the right pieces to keep this window open for as long as possible. So that's it. After everything we've seen, we can no longer pretend that everything is fine and carry on as if it were just another defeat in the season. This game against Rockets highlighted the urgency of the situation. Either the Warriors face the fact that they need a new brain on the perimeter next to the Curry, or they will watch, from the sidelines, as the title window slowly closes, year after year. Reed Shepard may be just the beginning of this conversation, but ignoring him after what he did at the Chase Center would be, at the very least, irresponsible. If the franchise has the courage, this type of move could make the difference between looking back and saying it was a worthy end to a historic era, or admitting, up front, that the team had talent, had opportunity, had warning, but lacked attitude. The question now is no longer whether the Warriors have a problem. The question is, what are they going to do with this information? Act like an organization that still thinks about rings or accept a supporting role in the Western Conference? If you want to continue following every behind-the-scenes, every trade rumor, every tactical analysis, and every step of this possible new chapter of the Golden State, the next step is simple. After you finish this video, go straight to the Golden State Warriors News Today playlist, which is in the comment pinned here below. There, I gathered all the most important content about the current situation of the franchise, possible reinforcements, exchange scenarios, and everything that could change the future of the team. Click on the playlist, marathon the videos, and stay up to date, because if a bomb explodes in the Golden State, you will first understand what it means for the present and future of the Warriors.